Friend, I want you to imagine for just a moment that you're standing at the edge of a vast canyon, looking back at the bridge you just crossed, a bridge that's now burning behind you. The smoke rises into the sky, and there's no going back to where you've been. All you have is the path ahead, unknown and unmarked, stretching into territory you've never explored before. That burning bridge might represent a failed marriage, a lost job, a broken dream, or perhaps a devastating diagnosis that changed everything you thought you knew about your future. Maybe it's the death of someone precious to you, leaving a hole in your heart so deep you wonder if it will ever heal. Or it could be the consequences of your own choices, mistakes that haunt you in the quiet hours when sleep won't come. Whatever brought you to this moment of needing to start again, I want you to know something vital. You're not alone in this valley. The God who spoke light into darkness, who breathed life into dust, who called forth creation from nothing, this same God specializes in new beginnings. He's in the business of taking broken pieces and creating masterpieces, of transforming ashes into beauty, of writing resurrection stories with lives that look finished. Turn with me to Isaiah 43:18-19, where God speaks through his prophet with words that echo across the centuries into your situation today. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Notice that God doesn't say he might do something new. He declares with absolute certainty that he is doing a new thing. The Hebrew word for new here is kadash, and it means fresh, unprecedented, something that's never existed before. It's not a patched up version of the old, not a repaired model of what was broken. God promises something entirely new, something that springs up like a flower, pushing through concrete, defying all odds and expectations. But here's what trips us up. We're so busy staring at the ashes of what was that we miss the seeds of what's beginning to grow. We're so fixated on the closed door that we don't notice the window God is opening. We're so overwhelmed by the ending that we can't see this is actually a beginning dressed in different clothes. I think of Peter on that terrible night when he denied knowing Jesus 3 times. Can you imagine the weight of that failure? This was the man who had walked on water, who had declared Jesus to be the Messiah, who had promised to die for his Lord. Yet when the pressure came, when the moment of testing arrived, Peter crumbled like a sandcastle before the tide. The rooster's crow must have sounded like a death knell to his dreams of being a faithful disciple. How do you come back from betraying the Son of God? How do you look in the mirror when you failed so spectacularly at the very moment it mattered most? Peter must have felt like his story was over, his purpose shattered beyond repair. But Jesus specialized in new beginnings. After the resurrection by the shores of Galilee, Jesus sought out Peter specifically. Over a charcoal fire, the same kind of fire where Peter had denied him, Jesus gave Peter 3 opportunities to affirm his love. 3 denials were met with 3 restorations. Where Peter had failed as a disciple, Jesus commissioned him as a shepherd. "Feed my sheep," Jesus said, not once but 3 times. He didn't say, "Peter, after you've properly punished yourself, after you've proven you'll never fail again, after you've made up for what you did, then maybe I'll use you." No, Jesus started Peter's new beginning right there in his brokenness, right there in his shame, right there where failure met grace. And Peter, he became the rock upon which Christ built his church. The man who couldn't stand up to a servant girl's question stood before thousands at Pentecost and proclaimed the gospel with such power that 3,000 souls were saved in a single day. The coward became courageous. The failure became faithful. The denier became the declarer of God's truth. But wait, you might be thinking, that was Peter. He was special, chosen, an apostle. What about ordinary people like us? What about when the failure is too great, the loss too devastating, the mistakes too numerous? Let me tell you about someone I'll call Sarah, whose story might sound familiar. Sarah was 43 when her world imploded. Her husband of 20 years didn't just leave. He left for her best friend. The divorce papers arrived the same week she was laid off from her job due to company downsizing. Her teenage son, angry and confused, chose to live with his father. Within 6 months, Sarah had lost her marriage, her career, her best friend, and daily life with her child. She told me later that she spent weeks unable to get out of bed, crushed under the weight of multiple griefs. "I felt like I was drowning in broad daylight," she said. "Everyone else was living their lives while I was gasping for air." The future she had carefully planned, the life she had built, the identity she had worn, all of it was gone. But here's where God's specialty began to shine through the darkness. Sarah's sister, who lived across the country, invited her to come stay for a while. With nothing left to lose, Sarah packed what she could fit in her car and drove west. She thought she was running away from her pain, but she was actually running straight into God's new beginning. In that new city, Sarah found a small church that welcomed her without questions. She joined a grief support group where she discovered she wasn't alone in her pain. A woman in the group mentioned that the local community college needed administrative help, and Sarah, who hadn't worked outside corporate America in 20 years, decided to apply. That part-time job at the community college opened doors Sarah never expected. She discovered a passion for helping struggling students navigate their educational journeys. Her own pain had given her eyes to see others who were hurting, and her administrative skills combined with her newfound empathy made her invaluable. Today, 5 years later, Sarah directs the college's Student Success Program. She's helped hundreds of students who were ready to drop out find their way forward. Her son, now in college himself, has reconnected with her and often brings friends home who need the kind of understanding only she can provide. She tells me, "I wouldn't wish that dark valley on anyone, but I can't deny that God used it to lead me to a purpose I never would have found otherwise." Did you catch that? God didn't just restore what Sarah lost, He gave her something entirely new. He took her administrative abilities, mixed them with compassion born from pain, and created a ministry she never could have imagined. The very wounds that nearly destroyed her became the source of healing she could offer others. This is the pattern we see throughout Scripture. Joseph's brothers meant to destroy him, but God used their betrayal to position Joseph to save nations from famine. Moses, a fugitive from justice, became the deliverer of God's people. David, the forgotten shepherd boy, became Israel's greatest king. Ruth, a foreign widow with nothing, became the great-grandmother of Jesus Christ. In each story, the new beginning wasn't just a return to the status quo. It was a transformation so complete that the person's greatest weakness became the platform for God's greatest work. The very thing that looked like the end became the seedbed for a beginning beyond imagination. But here's what I need you to understand. New beginnings rarely feel like beginnings at first. They often feel like endings, like loss, like disorientation. When a seed is planted, it must first die in the darkness of the soil before it can sprout. When a butterfly emerges, it must first endure the complete dissolution of its caterpillar form. When gold is refined, it must first pass through the fire. Right now, you might be in that dark soil, in that cocoon, in that refiner's fire. Everything familiar has been stripped away, and you can't see how anything good could come from this. But this is exactly where God does His best work. He's not intimidated by your circumstances. He's not wringing His hands, wondering how to fix this mess. He's preparing something new, something that will display His glory in ways the old never could. Think about the children of Israel standing at the edge of the Red Sea. Behind them, Pharaoh's army thundered closer. Before them, an impossible barrier stretched to the horizon. To the human eye, it was the end of the road, the final chapter, nowhere left to run. But God saw it differently. He saw an opportunity to demonstrate that he could make a way where there was no way. "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord," Moses told the terrified people. And then God did what only God can do. He parted the waters. He created a highway through the sea. What looked like a dead end became a thoroughfare to freedom. What appeared to be their destruction became the stage for their deliverance. The same God who parted the Red Sea is looking at your impossible situation right now. He sees the army behind you. Maybe it's an army of regrets, failures, or circumstances beyond your control. He sees the barrier before you. Perhaps it's fear, inadequacy, or sheer exhaustion. And he's saying, "Watch what I'm about to do. I specialize in making ways where there are no way." But notice what God required of Israel. They had to step into the parted waters. They had to walk between those towering walls of water, trusting that God would hold them back. They had to move forward, even when every instinct screamed to run back to the familiar bondage of Egypt. New beginnings require courage, not the absence of fear, but the decision to take the next step despite the fear. What step is God asking you to take today? Maybe it's forgiveness, forgiving someone who devastated you, or perhaps even harder, forgiving yourself. Maybe it's letting go of what you've been gripping so tightly, that relationship that's over, that dream that died, that image of how life was supposed to be. Perhaps it's saying yes to an opportunity that terrifies you, or no to something that's been slowly destroying you. I remember talking with a man named Robert who had been a successful surgeon until alcoholism cost him his medical license, his practice, and very nearly his life. He sat in my office, shoulders slumped, describing himself as a failure, a disgrace to his profession, a disappointment to everyone who had believed in him. "I had it all," he said, "and I threw it away. There's no coming back from this." But Robert was wrong about there being no comeback. What he couldn't see in that moment was that God was already preparing a new beginning. The humiliation that brought him to his knees also brought him to the cross. In his brokenness, he encountered the God who specializes in restoration. Through recovery, Robert discovered that his medical knowledge, combined with his personal understanding of addiction, made him uniquely equipped to help others fighting the same battle. Today, he runs a recovery clinic that has helped thousands of people reclaim their lives from addiction. He often says, "I thought losing my medical license was the end of my usefulness. I didn't realize God was just redirecting my skills for a different kind of healing." Do you see the pattern? God doesn't waste our pain. He doesn't discard our experiences, even the painful ones. Instead, he weaves them into a new tapestry, creating beauty we couldn't have imagined. The very things that broke us become the tools he uses to bring healing to others. Our mess becomes our message. Our test becomes our testimony. Our pain becomes our platform. But let me be honest with you. Embracing a new beginning means releasing the old. And that's where many of us get stuck. We want the new thing God is doing, but we also want to keep clutching the old. We're like someone trying to receive a gift with hands already full. God is extending something fresh and life-giving, but we can't receive it because we won't let go of what's familiar, even if it's killing us. Jesus addressed this when he said, "You can't put new wine in old wineskins. The new wine's fermentation will burst the old rigid skins." The new thing God wants to do in your life won't fit in the old structures, the old patterns, the old ways of thinking. This isn't cruel, it's necessary. A butterfly can't fly if it's still trying to crawl like a caterpillar. A plant can't bloom if it refuses to let go of its seed coat. What old wineskins do you need to release? Maybe it's the identity you've worn for so long, the successful one, the strong one, the one who has it all together. Perhaps it's the narrative you've been telling yourself that you're too old, too broken, too far gone for God to use. It might be the bitterness you've nursed, the grudge you've carried, the shame you've worn like a cloak. Here's what I've learned in my own journey and in walking with others through theirs. God's new beginnings often start small. They begin with a mustard seed of faith, a widow's mite of trust, a boy's lunch of resources. They start with one step, one prayer, one moment of surrender. They begin when we stop demanding that God restore what was and start asking Him to reveal what can be. Remember Naomi? She returned to Bethlehem after losing her husband and both sons, telling everyone to call her Mara, meaning bitter, because she went away full and came back empty. She couldn't see past her losses to recognize that Ruth, her Moabite daughter-in-law who returned with her, was God's provision for a new beginning. Through Ruth came Boaz. Through Boaz came redemption. Through redemption came a grandson who would nurse at Naomi's breast and restore her joy. The woman who declared herself empty became full again, but not in the way she expected. God didn't give her back her husband and sons. He gave her something new, a different family, a different future, a different kind of fullness. And through her story, He continues to encourage millions who think their emptiness disqualifies them from God's purposes. This is crucial for you to understand today. Your emptiness doesn't disqualify you, it qualifies you. Your brokenness doesn't eliminate you from God's purposes, it positions you for them. Your failure doesn't write you off from God's story, it writes you into it. Because our God specializes in filling empty vessels, healing broken hearts, and launching world-changing ministries from the ashes of human failure. Think about the early church. It wasn't started by religious professionals with impeccable credentials. It was launched by fishermen, tax collectors, and former persecutors. It was built by people who had failed, doubted, and run away. Yet God used these broken, ordinary people to turn the world upside down. Why? Because His power shows up best in human weakness. His glory shines brightest through cracked vessels. So what does this mean for you, sitting where you are right now, carrying whatever burden brought you to this message? It means that your story isn't over. It means that what looks like an ending is actually a beginning in disguise. It means that the God who spoke worlds into existence is speaking a new word over your life. But you have to listen for it. You have to quiet the voices of condemnation, comparison, and criticism long enough to hear the voice of the one who calls you beloved. You have to stop rehearsing your failures and start rehearsing His faithfulness. You have to cease dwelling on what you've lost and start looking for what He's preparing. I think of Mary Magdalene at the tomb on resurrection morning. She was so blinded by grief, so focused on the body that was missing, that she didn't recognize Jesus standing right in front of her. She thought He was the gardener, and in a way she was right. He was about to plant something new in her heart, something that would bloom into a testimony that still encourages us 2,000 years later. It wasn't until Jesus spoke her name, Mary, that her eyes were opened. In that moment, her grief transformed into joy, her despair into hope, her ending into the most glorious beginning imaginable. She who had come to tend to a dead body became the first witness of the resurrection. She who had been delivered from 7 demons became the apostle to the apostles. Friend, Jesus is speaking your name today. He's calling you out of the tomb of what was into the garden of what can be. He's inviting you to stop looking for dead things and start recognizing the risen life He's offering. He's asking you to trust Him with your new beginning, even if you can't see how it could possibly work out. The practical question is, how do we cooperate with God in these new beginnings? First, we must choose to believe that God's promise of newness applies to us personally. Not just to biblical heroes or other people with neater stories, but to us in our specific situation. Faith isn't feeling certain. Faith is choosing to act on God's promises even when our emotions scream otherwise. Second, we need to take inventory of what needs to be released. What are you holding on to that's preventing you from embracing the new? Is it unforgiveness? Is it the need to understand why things happened the way they did? Is it the demand that life return to the way it was? Write it down, name it specifically. Then in an act of faith, release it to God. Third, look for the small opportunities God is placing before you. New beginnings rarely announce themselves with fanfare. They often come disguised as inconveniences, interruptions, or insignificant choices. The phone call you don't feel like making, the group you don't feel like joining, the risk you don't feel like taking. These small acts of obedience often become the first steps into God's new thing. Fourth, surround yourself with people who can see God's work in your life when you can't. We all need friends like Aaron and Hur, who held up Moses' arms when he was too weary to hold them up himself. Find a community of faith where your story is welcomed, where your pain is acknowledged, and where your future is believed in. Let me tell you one more story. I knew a woman named Grace, her given name, though she felt it mocked her for years. She had grown up in the church, married a pastor, and spent decades serving in ministry. But hidden beneath the ministry smile was a secret that was slowly killing her. She was addicted to prescription painkillers, a dependency that began with legitimate chronic pain but spiraled into something that controlled her life. When the truth came out, as truth always does, the fallout was devastating. Her husband's ministry was affected. Their children were hurt and confused. Church members felt betrayed. Grace entered treatment feeling like she had destroyed everything good in her life. I was the pastor's wife, she told me. I was supposed to be the example, and instead I became the cautionary tale. But in the ruins of her carefully constructed life, Grace encountered grace, not just as a concept, but as a living reality. In treatment, stripped of all pretense, she met God in a way her decades of church involvement had never allowed. She discovered that the God she had served was also the God who wanted to heal her, not just from addiction, but from the perfectionism and performance that had driven her to medicate her pain in the first place. Today, Grace leads a ministry for women struggling with hidden addictions. She creates safe spaces where church leaders' wives can be honest about their struggles without fear of judgment. Her fall from the pedestal became her platform for authentic ministry. She often says, "I spent years trying to live up to my name. It wasn't until I failed completely that I discovered what grace really means." Do you hear the common thread in all these stories? God doesn't just repair, He redeems. He doesn't just fix, He transforms. He doesn't just restore the old. He creates something new that carries the wisdom of the old, but isn't limited by it. Your new beginning won't look like your old life with a fresh coat of paint. It will be something altogether different, something that could only have been born from the exact circumstances you've walked through. This is why Paul could write with such confidence, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here." The Greek word for new here is kainos, which means fresh in quality, unprecedented. It's not neos, which would mean new in time. God isn't just giving you a new calendar, He's giving you a new capacity. He's not just changing your circumstances, He's changing you. But transformation is a process, not an event. The butterfly doesn't emerge from the chrysalis fully ready to soar. Its wings are crumpled and wet. It must hang upside down, pumping fluid into those wings, waiting for them to dry and strengthen. There's a time of vulnerability between the old dying and the new fully emerging. You might be in that space right now, no longer what you were, not yet what you're becoming. This in-between place is uncomfortable. Everything is changing, and you might feel like you're losing yourself. But you're not losing yourself, you're finding yourself. You're discovering who you are when the props are kicked away, when the masks come off, when the false identities crumble. You're learning that your worth isn't in what you do, but in whose you are. The prophet Jeremiah watched his nation crumble. He saw Jerusalem destroyed, the temple burned, the people carried into exile. Everything that defined Israel seemed lost. But in the midst of this devastation, God gave Jeremiah a message that still resonates. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Notice when this promise was given, not in prosperity but in captivity, not in triumph but in tragedy, not when everything was going right but when everything had gone wrong. God's promise of a future came when the present looked hopeless. His declaration of hope came when despair seemed the only reasonable response. This is our God, the one who speaks hope into hopeless situations, who breathes life into death valleys, who plants gardens in wildernesses. He's not discouraged by your circumstances. He's not intimidated by your failures. He's not put off by your doubts. He sees past all of that to the person He's creating you to become. But here's what I must tell you. New beginnings require participation. God parts the sea, but we must walk through. He provides the manna, but we must gather it. He opens the door, but we must step across the threshold. Faith isn't passive, it's the most active thing in the world. It's choosing to move when everything in you wants to stay still, choosing to hope when despair feels more realistic, choosing to trust when you can't see the outcome. What would it look like for you to actively participate in your new beginning today? Maybe it means making that counseling appointment you've been postponing. Perhaps it's having that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. It might be updating your resume, joining that support group, or simply getting out of bed and facing the day. New beginnings are built on small, faithful steps in the right direction. I want to speak specifically to those of you who feel disqualified by your past. You think you've made too many mistakes, hurt too many people, wasted too many opportunities. You believe God might give new beginnings to others, but surely He's given up on you. Friend, let me tell you something that might save your life. There is no sin too great for God's grace, no failure too final for His forgiveness, no past too broken for His redemption. The Apostle Paul called himself the chief of sinners. He had persecuted the church, approved of Stephen's stoning, and tried to destroy the very faith he would later champion. If anyone should have been disqualified from ministry, it was Paul. But God chose this broken, violent man to write much of the New Testament and plant churches throughout the known world. Why? Because God's grace shines brightest against the backdrop of human failure. Your past doesn't disqualify you, it qualifies you to speak hope to others with similar pasts. Your failures don't eliminate you from ministry, they equip you for ministry to the failed. Your pain doesn't sideline you from purpose, it prepares you to bring healing to the pain. God wastes nothing, not even our mistakes. But you must make a choice. You can remain at the graveside of your old life, mourning what was, rehearsing what should have been, paralyzed by regret. Or you can accept God's invitation to new life, different from what you planned, but not less than what He promised. You can stay in the Friday night of the soul, or you can watch for Sunday's resurrection. As we prepare to close, I want to paint a picture of what your new beginning might look like. It might not be dramatic or sudden. It might start with a simple sense of peace, a lifting of the crushing weight you've been carrying. It might begin with a creative idea, a new connection, an unexpected opportunity. It might start with the courage to be honest about your struggle, to ask for help, to admit you can't do this alone. Your new beginning might look like reconciliation with someone you thought you'd never speak to again. It might look like discovering purpose in the very pain you've been trying to escape. It might look like using your business skills in ministry, your artistic gifts in healing, your analytical mind in compassion. God specializes in combinations we would never imagine. I think of the woman at the well, who came to draw water in the heat of the day to avoid the condemning looks of her neighbors. 5 husbands and a live-in boyfriend had left her reputation in ruins. She was the town scandal, the cautionary tale, the one parents pointed out as an example of what not to become. But one conversation with Jesus transformed her from the woman everyone avoided into the evangelist everyone followed. She left her water jar at the well, the very thing she came for, because she found something better. She ran back to town, to the very people she had been avoiding, with a message that changed everything. Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? Her shame became her platform. Her past became her credential. Her encounter became her ministry. The same Jesus who met her at the well is meeting you right now. He knows everything you've ever done, every secret you're hiding, every failure you're carrying, and He's offering you living water anyway. He's not put off by your past. He's not scandalized by your secrets. He's not discouraged by your defeats. He sees past all of that to the evangelist, the healer, the hope bringer He's calling you to become. But here's the crucial question. Will you leave your water jar? Will you let go of the old identity, the old coping mechanisms, the old ways of doing life? Will you risk running back into community with a new message, a new purpose, a new identity? Will you let your encounter with grace transform you from someone who hides to someone who heralds hope? The time has come for decision. You can close this message and return to life as you've known it, continuing to circle the same mountains, fight the same battles, nurse the same wounds. Or you can accept that this moment, this message, this stirring in your heart is God's invitation to something new. You can keep trying to resurrect what's dead, or you can embrace the resurrection life Jesus offers. What is God asking you to do right now? Don't overthink it. Don't talk yourself out of it. That first step might seem impossibly small compared to the mountain you're facing. But remember, God specializes in multiplying small offerings. He turns mustard seeds into trees, little boys' lunches into banquets, and trembling steps of faith into triumphant journeys of transformation. Perhaps God is asking you to write a letter of forgiveness, make a phone call of reconciliation, schedule an appointment for help. Maybe He's prompting you to share your story with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Possibly He's calling you to stop something that's been destroying you or start something that terrifies you. Whatever it is, do it today. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when circumstances are perfect. Today. Here's my challenge to you. Take one concrete step towards your new beginning before this day ends. Write it down right now. Make it specific, measurable, something you can actually do. Then do it. Not in your own strength, but in the power of the one who specializes in impossibilities. Let today be the day you stop camping in the wilderness of what was and start walking toward the promise of what can be. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. You know who they are, that person who's convinced their story is over, who can't see past their pain to God's purpose. Send them this message with a personal note telling them you believe in their new beginning. Sometimes being the messenger of hope is the first step in our own journey toward it. Comment below with just 2 words, starting again. You don't need to share details unless you want to. Just make a public declaration that you're ready for God's new beginning. Let your comment be a stake in the ground, a memorial stone, marking the day you chose to believe that your best chapters are not behind you, but ahead of you. And finally, join a community where your new beginning can take root and grow. Faith flourishes in fellowship. Hope grows in community. New beginnings need the soil of supportive relationships to fully bloom. Don't try to do this alone. God designed us for connection, and His new beginnings often come through His people. Friend, as we close, I want you to know that I'm praying for you. I'm praying that God would open your eyes to see the new thing He's already beginning. I'm praying for courage to replace your fear, hope to overcome your despair, and faith to step into the unknown. I'm praying that months from now, you'll look back on this moment as the turning point when everything changed. May the God of new beginnings meet you where you are and lead you where you're meant to be. May He take your ashes and give you beauty, your mourning and give you dancing, your despair and give you hope. May He write a story with your life that causes others to believe in the God who specializes in resurrection. May your new beginning start now, and may it exceed anything you could ask or imagine. The same God who rolled away the stone from Jesus' tomb is rolling away the stones from yours. The same power that raised Christ from the dead is available to raise you into newness of life. The same love that refused to leave Jesus in the grave refuses to leave you in yours. This is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your best chapter yet. Go now in the confidence that God is already at work, preparing the way, orchestrating the details, arranging the appointments. Your new beginning isn't just possible, it's promised. It isn't just available, it's already in motion. It isn't just for others, it's for you today, right now. The God who specializes in new beginnings is specializing in yours. Trust Him, follow Him, and watch what He does with a life surrendered to His transforming power. Remember, friend, your past may shape you, but it doesn't define you. Your failures may teach you, but they don't limit you. Your pain may mark you, but it doesn't own you. You belong to the God of new beginnings, and He's not finished with you yet. In fact, He's just getting started. Your new beginning starts now.